You ever catch yourself watching one small moment and realizing it actually might mean way more than it looks? That's exactly what we're dealing with here. Dak Prescott quietly telling Jerry Jones, "Hey, show the man the money," about George Pickens. That little line is the pebble that sent ripples across the whole pond. At face value, it's simple. Your quarterback asking the owner to keep a guy he thinks helps the team. Behind that, though, there's a bigger question. Does Dak's opinion actually carry weight in Dallas? Or is it just another voice in a stadium full of opinions? I want to talk to you like I'm sitting right across from you. No fluff, just the stuff Cowboys fans care about. Because whether you love Dak or you've been frustrated, this is about how front office choices and player trust line up, and that's what makes or breaks a season. Think about it with me. Dak speaks up about Pickens. The internet lights up. People start calling for restructures, for prioritizing certain contracts. And then you hear the sarcastic, "Did he tell Jerry to keep Micah?" That's the exact kind of thing that shows how quickly any hint of influence can be reduced to a punchline. But that punchline hides the real issue. If Dak's asking to keep weapons around him, and if the team's defense isn't giving him the help he needs, that's a red flag. It's not just pride, it's the simple calculus of football. You can have an MVP-level offense and still lose the games that matter if the rest of the roster doesn't match the effort. Right now, you and I both know how often it feels like Dak's doing the heavy lifting. Before we dive deeper, do me a favor. If you're into honest takes about the Cowboys, subscribe and hit that bell. We're trying to get this channel up to 16,000 subscribers so we can bring more breakdowns like this faster. Also, tell me right now in the comments, do you think Dak's plea for Pickens actually changes anything with Jerry? Yes or no? Quick, one-word answer, then tell me why. I'll read through and react to the best ones in the next live stream. Now, let's unpack why a single line from Dak can feel like both a hope and a complaint, and how that sets the stage for this whole betrayal conversation. You might have heard people tossing around this thing called the betrayal index, and at first, it sounds like just another stat, another number someone cooked up to fill airtime. But once you break it down, it's hard not to look at Dak Prescott and think, yeah, that label actually fits. The betrayal index measures how much a quarterback is being let down by everything outside of his control. The defense, the special teams, even coaching decisions. In Dak's case, the data is brutal. He ranks near the top of all quarterbacks in his own performance. Yet the Cowboys' defense and special teams rank near the very bottom. That's not just a bad balance. That's a full-blown mismatch between effort and support. Add up that gap and you get Dak's betrayal index number, an insane -31. That means he's playing lights out, while the rest of the team, at least statistically, is dragging him backward. Don't take my word for it. Think back to those games where Dak put up 40 points. Against the Giants, barely squeaked out a win. Against the Packers, 5 touchdowns, over 70% completion, and still couldn't pull away. That's not a quarterback problem. That's a team imbalance. When you do everything right and the outcome still feels like a loss. That's the kind of thing that wears a player down. It also sends a clear message to fans like us. The numbers might change, but the story hasn't. We saw it with Tony Romo back in the day, putting up video game stats while the defense gave up late leads. We saw it with Drew Brees in New Orleans, losing shootouts even after 5,000-yard seasons. You can't win consistently when you're the only one bailing water from the boat. The frustrating part is how familiar it feels. Cowboys fans have been through this movie before. We've watched talented offenses get overshadowed by defensive breakdowns, and every time, the same narrative pops up. Dak can't win big games. But how fair is that? When the stats say he's the second best in EPA per start, and the defense ranks dead last, it's not a lack of leadership, it's a lack of balance. Numbers without context just become fuel for hot takes, and Cowboys Nation deserves better than lazy arguments. And you can tell this kind of imbalance affects the locker room too. When one side of the ball keeps producing and the other keeps faltering, frustration builds. Players notice who's pulling their weight. Coaches notice who they can count on. And eventually, fans notice who's really getting betrayed. That's where this whole conversation about Dak's betrayal starts to hit home. It's not about sympathy, it's about accountability. So where did the Cowboys get into a spot where their most important player is fighting uphill every week, even when he's playing at an MVP level? The short answer: money. You can talk all day about heart, leadership, and chemistry, but when contracts hit the table, that's where you find out who the organization truly values. Between George Pickens, Micah Parsons, and Dak Prescott himself, Jerry Jones has to make decisions that don't just shape this season, they'll shape the next 5. The thing is, Cowboys fans have heard this story before. Big names, big potential, and even bigger hesitation from the front office when it's time to sign the check. But here's the twist. Dak Prescott personally told Jerry he wanted to keep Pickens in the fold. That's a bold move from your franchise quarterback, and it should carry weight. The question is, will it? Jerry Jones isn't afraid to spend money. He's afraid to spend it in the wrong place. He's always juggling that line between keeping his stars happy and staying fiscally smart. But the truth is, in today's NFL, if you want elite weapons, you have to pay elite money. Guys like Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, and CeeDee Lamb are pulling numbers that would have been unthinkable a few years ago. So, when you start talking about locking up a player like George Pickens, you're not talking about a mid-level deal anymore. You're talking north of $30 million a year if you want to stay competitive. Yet we still hear the Cowboys can't afford it. They can, though. If they want to, they just have to be willing to restructure and prioritize differently. That's where Dak's influence, or lack of it, comes into play. If your quarterback is telling ownership, "Hey, this guy helps me win," and they shrug it off, what message does that send? It tells the locker room that player voices don't really matter. It tells the fans that even when the offense delivers, the organization might not follow through. And maybe that's where this betrayal feeling really starts, not just on the field, but in the boardroom. Because Dak's out there putting up numbers, proving he can lead, while the business side of the team hesitates to build fully around him. Meanwhile, Micah Parsons, the defensive anchor, still needs to be secured long-term. You can't blame fans for feeling anxious when every offseason turns into a guessing game about who gets paid and who gets pushed aside. Here's what a lot of people forget. The salary cap isn't a wall, it's a puzzle. Teams move pieces all the time. Look at what they did with CeeDee Lamb. The contract looks huge on paper, but through smart restructuring, they cut the cap hit and opened space. The Cowboys could do the same again, whether that's to pay Pickens, help the defense, or prepare for Dak's next deal. The money's there. The question is, does Jerry want to use it? If your quarterback is telling the owner to keep a weapon and the front office declines, it's more than a missed signing. It's a message about priorities. That's why so many fans feel betrayed when they watch Dak do everything and still see the team fall short. So, here's the question I want you to answer right now. If you were Jerry Jones and you had to choose where to invest, what would you do? Would you spend the money on George Pickens to keep Dak surrounded by elite weapons, or would you put that cash toward locking up Micah Parsons and rebuilding the defense? Type yes in the comments if you'd pay Pickens, or no if you'd prioritize Parsons and the defense instead. I'll be checking to see where Cowboys Nation really stands on this. All of this, Dak speaking up for Pickens, the betrayal index, the contract chess. It's not just noise. It's the kind of storyline that can define a season, and maybe even define Dak's legacy in Dallas. If the Cowboys answer by doubling down around Dak, paying for weapons, restructuring contracts smartly, and shoring up the defense, you could see a team that finally matches what its quarterback is giving every week. On the other hand, if ownership hedges, stalls, or prioritizes the wrong things, that resentment grows. It shows up in the locker room, it shows up in the stands, and eventually it shows up on the scoreboard. And you don't want to be the fan who looks back and says, "I told you so," because that's a hollow victory. What matters most going forward is clarity and action. Fans want to hear a plan, but more than that, they want to see moves that prove the plan isn't just words. If Jerry's going to respond, he needs to do two things. One, make it clear who the cornerstone is, and frankly, that cornerstone has to include Dak. And two, show that he understands how to allocate resources so offense and defense both have a chance to win. You can't throw cash at every problem, but you can prioritize the pieces that move the needle. That could mean keeping Pickens, restructuring other deals, or locking down Parsons. There are options. The worst option is indecision. So make a pick. Here are 3 bold predictions. Type A, B, or C in the comments. Prediction A, Jerry reworks existing contracts, finds cap space, and the Cowboys sign Pickens long-term, giving Dak another top weapon. Prediction B, the Cowboys prioritize the defense, lock up Parsons first, and let the Pickens market cool off or go elsewhere. Prediction C, Jerry plays it conservative. Both sides drag out negotiations, and the roster keeps feeling like it's a step behind what Dak needs to win the big games. Which one do you think happens? Tell me why, and I'll highlight the smartest takes in the next video. Thanks for sticking with me through this breakdown. If you want more of these deep dives, contract analysis, roster moves, and live reactions when Jerry or Dak make headlines, hit subscribe and help us reach our goal of 16,000 subscribers. Smash the like button if you think Dak deserves more credit than the narratives give him, and share this with a fellow Cowboys fan who needs the full context.